Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville, Knox County government, politics, business, education, anything else that grabs our attention. I'm Scott Barker, editor of Compass. We're a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all of those topics. You can find us at CompassKnox.com. We are recording this podcast at the studios of Barbarian Productions in Rocky Hill, where Lord Seth Barber reigns supreme. He tells me everything to do, and I am just a robot over here reading off a screen. Seth, it's Friday when we're recording this. It's a rainy end to dry January. So
I see what you did there. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's not the most beautiful day out there, but I don't mind. It's a good day if you can to record a podcast and then go cuddle up on the couch and maybe watch a movie I've been holding off on for a while.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites that you're ready to watch?
I got a couple. I just in the sheer cheesiness, there's that new Will Ferrell. It's not a rom-com per se, but it's supposed to be kind of funny, silly, and so just something light and breezy. I don't want anything too serious on a dreary day. I want to giggle a few times. Nothing that's going to make me think too much. It's been a hard thinking week. This special session has been really draining on the emotions for a lot of people out there, myself included. So it's time for a little bit of a brain break.
Yeah, I was about to say you might want to watch a movie. I just want to take a nap. So
yeah.
Anyways, on the podcast today, we're going to look at several stories that we ran on our website this week. One of them is a business story. The Pilot Light founder, Jason Boardman, is stepping back, and will, for those who aren't sure about what the Pilot Light is and why that matters, we'll talk about that. Also, Legal Aid of East Tennessee has been providing eviction prevention services for the last couple of years as the housing crisis has exacerbated some of those problems for people who making it harder for people to pay the rent, and they get in arrears with their landlords, and that's been going on, and it's been funded. Their program's been funded by the COVID relief pool of money, which is drying up, and they don't know where the money exactly is going to come from to keep that going. We'll talk about that. There was controversy in city government this week. Turn Up Knox, the organization that helps that provides violence intervention services in the city to try to reduce the number of shootings and homicides. There's a contract dispute. We talked about that a little bit last week. We had some pretty major developments this week. We'll talk about those. But we'll start out with the big news of the week in Tennessee, and that was the special session of the state legislature that Governor Bill Lee called. They met. They started kind of late Monday, but really it was Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. The Tuesday and Wednesday were primarily committee votes on the various topics, and then Thursday was were the floor votes for some of them. Some of them they had floor votes on Wednesday as well. So, but anyway, the special session, dealt with three topics. One was disaster relief for Northeast Tennessee from Hurricane Helene. As one might guess, there wasn't any opposition to it. Passed on a bipartisan basis overwhelmingly. not really, as far as, there was no political dispute over that. Everybody wanted to make sure that funds were available for the people who have suffered up in Northeast Tennessee. It's a very, you don't hear, much about Helene on a day-to-day basis anymore in Knoxville because, these were counties in Upper East Tennessee that were primarily affected. But I mean, the roads are still washed out. The buildings are still destroyed. It's not. It's a fact of life for them, and that was recognized in the legislature. The other another topic was the immigration enforcement, and of course that was a party line argument. The Republicans were lined up behind Lee on his bill, which establishes an enforcement office within the Department of Safety to work with the Trump administration on its stated intent to and efforts that are already underway to increase enforcement of federal immigration laws. Remember, federal law, is controls immigration, and states can't unilaterally just enforce immigration laws. That's a federal responsibility, but under President Trump, they are going to be enlisting the aid of the states more and more in the enforcement of immigration laws. And so Lee and the Republican supermajority wanted to get in front of that and have everything in place and ready to go for the things that are going to be coming down the pike. Presumably increase numbers of sweeps for people who are undocumented. They've already started in Chicago. The Justice Department has said, Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, the agency that primarily enforces immigration laws, can now go into churches and schools to apprehend people they believe are here without documentation, and so which is something that they had not done as a matter of policy for longer than a decade, like 15 years. So it's a big change. But Lee's office, the Immigration Enforcement Office, will help the Trump administration do all of those things while they're here. The one interesting thing about that bill is that they have decided to make it a felony for local officials to vote in favor of sanctuary policies. Sanctuary policies are basically where they say we're not going to cooperate with we're not going to cooperate with the government on that. And really, the government can't be compelled to help the government on that. But the whole idea that there are sanctuary cities, quote unquote, where people who are here, undocumented immigrants can go and not have to worry about anything. Of course, they still have to worry about ICE. ICE is going to be there anyway. So, but anyway, this pretty extraordinary to make it a felony for a public official to cast a vote in a certain way. It's that's extraordinary, and
so let me throw an example, Scott, because I'm curious about this. So if, for example, it would be like a KPD policy that's getting discussed, and the city just let me rephrase. The state comes to KPD and says, "We want your help with this," and the city, as a matter of KPD's policy, puts an ordinance in place saying, we don't want you to, KPD, we don't want you to participate in this.
Yeah, something like that might qualify for that, and but they would compel, it would punish a vote, and that doesn't happen. I mean, one thing is typically people in representatives in governing bodies have immunity from prosecutions for their official actions. Remember, there was just a big Supreme Court decision about that, as regarding President Trump, and so this is already in the legislature's own attorney said that portion is constitutionally suspect, and sure enough, a couple hours after the vote to approve the immigration enforcement measure went down, the ACLU of Tennessee said, we're going to sue. So there will be a legal battle over at least that portion of the immigration enforcement package. But it is going to go into effect as soon as Lee signs it. I don't. And which I think he'll do that within days, I'm sure. But the big focus of the special session was the school voucher proposal that Lee had put forward. That was the Democrat. In fact, the Democrats said, the only reason that we're considering disaster relief at the same time is they're trying to bribe people. Bribe representatives of Northeast Tennessee into supporting the voucher bill as well. But the voucher bill is about a $430 million bill. It's called the Education Freedom Act. We've talked about this numerous times. Would provide scholarships for that worth a little bit over $7,000 to students to pay for tuition at private schools. Of course, Tennessee is constitutionally mandated to operate a public school system, and this would take public dollars and give them to students to spend at private schools. There would be 20,000 scholarships in the first year, 5,000 a year added thereafter. At least that's the plan. One of the interesting things about this is, the Republicans made the argument that this is choice for for families, especially those that are going to underperforming schools, that low income Tennesseans would benefit from having a choice. They could send their kids to private schools that are presumably better than the public schools. But the legislative analysis of the bill, this isn't somebody coming in from the outside. This isn't the Democratic Party saying this is the legislative analysis. Said that 2/3 of the students who would be getting these scholarships already go to private schools. Their families can already afford to send them to private schools. So there would only be around a little bit more than 6,000 kids who are in public schools now who would get scholarships to go to private schools in the future. But this
I got to interrupt on that. I got a question because of the 20,000 for this first batch, the first 10,000 are supposed to be at the 300% reduced lunch or less income.
Yeah.
So
that's $174,000 or so for a family of four.
Right.
That's not. I mean, it's not.
Yeah. I qualify, but I don't mind saying that publicly. That's decent money, but So the question is so the only way this would work to get all 20,000 out this year would be that at least 4,000 of current students in private schools fit within that threshold.
It would be more like 13,000.
Well, no,
no,
10,000 of them could be any amount of income.
That's true.
And then
that's
that 3 to 4,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My math.
Yeah, you're fine.
My math was backwards.
This is what we do. This is the math that we.
That's why we talk.
And so, right. So 3,000 or 4,000 of those students who would have to currently be enrolled in private school, whose income threshold is below that 300%.
Right.
I don't expect you to know the answer to that, if that's a true statement currently or not. But I guess the question would be: so if there's only really 6,000 to 7,000 students that would be added to, those would most likely have to be in that under that threshold if they could afford it, because then we could theoretically only have 10,000 of the 20,000 available go in. Because to me, and on a personal note on it, it's like my argument is I didn't get a choice out of this program because I can't afford the difference for what we currently have publicly available for me to take and then pay the difference or whatever it would be to get in. And so I don't like. It doesn't seem like it's going to be very likely that 10,000 of the 300% or less is going to be filled.
Well, that's one of those things that we'll have to see when it comes out. I think that they're. I think that a lot of those will be filled. I think that you got to remember that this is these scholarships are $7,000, and private school tuitions do vary. There are private schools that actually have tuition that's lower than $7,000. Very few, but a few. But if you would you be able to go to Webb where tuition's exponentially more? No. But a school that charges $10,000 for tuition, you might be able to find $3,000 to make up the difference and go. If you're making $174,000, that's the difference between making $174,000 and making $171,000.
Right.
That's not a whole lot of a difference. Although, I don't want people sending me emails saying, "Oh, every dollar counts." I know every dollar counts.
Well, and on top of that too,
it's a much easier.
Right. It's a lower hurdle to get over.
Yeah. And, but anyway, the vote was much closer than the others. In the House, 20 Republicans, defected, if you will, to the other side. Most of them from rural areas where, kind of the fear is, you've got these small school systems, but they're the largest employer in the county. And the fear is that there will be these pop-up schools that charge, $7,000 a year, that and would take students away from these the public schools in these small the rural areas. So you had all those defectors in the House, and the vote was 54 to 44. It's only 4 more votes needed to pass. So it wasn't an easy win in the House for Lee. I remember last year Lee had a similar program that he proposed, and it was the House and the Senate ended up never voting on anything because they couldn't. They tried to come up with their own versions and never did work. And part of that was the rural legislators, their concerns. In the Senate, a similar thing happened. You had Republicans who voted against Lee's proposal.
Our very own Richard Briggs.
Richard Briggs is one of them. He stayed. He has long been an opponent of school vouchers and stayed there. Becky Massey used to be against vouchers, and she explained on the House or on the Senate floor that she, in talking with her constituents, she changed her mind and has voted in favor of the school voucher program. There were a couple of earlier in the week. There were a couple of local voices that made themselves heard at the House Education Committee. One of them was School Board Chair Becky Henderson. She is a Republican. The school boards across the state had passed resolutions opposing the voucher plan. The Tennessee School Board Association opposed the voucher plan. The Knox County School Board, which has a 5-4 Republican majority, opted not to add vouchers to its list of priorities for the legislature to consider. So they are not on the record as supporting vouchers as a board. Henderson herself is a voucher proponent, however, despite her position as school board chair. She went to the House Education Committee to speak. She prefaced her remarks first by saying, "I am here in my private capacity, not as school board chair in Knox County, though every single House member committee member who was in there knew then that she is the."
Even so, how many people who aren't on school boards or have some sort of position of logic are speaking in this committee meeting?
That was the reason she got to speak in that committee meeting is she is the school board chair.
Right, so she could say it's on her personal capacity all she wants, but technically speaking, her personal capacity wouldn't have got her on that stage.
And a lot of people have pointed that out. There were howls on social media over her participation in that, and she did give a full-throated endorsement of school choice measures, which is puzzling to say the least for
counterintuitive, maybe.
But she did. There are people who are just absolutely furious about that. There are teachers who are absolutely furious about this.
It does seem kind of odd, as if I don't know, maybe a Bill Gates is out talking publicly about how much he wants Apple computers in places. It does seem kind of like, you're the head of a thing and you're allowed to your opinion, of course.
Yeah.
But you're also the head of a thing and you're promoting a competitor.
Yeah.
It seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
At minimum.
Yes. And so she spoke out. One thing we didn't mention, forgot when talking about this bill too, is there was an amendment made to the bill that, first of all, the bill originally had $2,000 one-time bonuses for teachers if it passed, and that obviously was an attempt to sway educators to support this. But then they added an amendment that said, "Hey, the only way that school systems will get this money to pay their teachers the $2,000 bonus is to pass resolution endorsing the voucher program." So that's kind of which is something that would not have passed the Knox County School Board before. We'll see what happens moving forward. But Henderson did speak. She did. I would say that when she runs for re-election, assuming she runs for re-election, that I would look forward to an opponent, at least one opponent, pointing out that her testimony and trying to use that to defeat her in the in re-election. So, but she went. She said her piece. Also, speaking at that committee meeting was Zach. I believe it's Wishart. He is the principal of middle schools and high schools at River's Edge Christian Academy in West Knoxville, and of course that's a private school that would presumably accept students using the vouchers. In fact, it's one of the few private schools where that a voucher would cover the tuition costs. Middle and high school students' tuition there is about $5,500 a year. So the vouchers would cover that, and with a little left over. I'm not sure if they can use the leftover money, but
You can. We went deep into that. So shameless plug. If you go back and listen to my episode that I did on Almost Agreement podcast with Jennifer Owens last week, we talked about that. There's a whole section in there on allowed usage beyond the tuition. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's well then.
Shameless plug.
If you want to go a little deeper into that, then you can go to
right for completion.
Almost in Agreement, and
we were discussing it on last week, so this is before anything happened, and so there are some changes through the amendments from what we said, but we went down through it in detail, and this being one of those details. If you're curious, you can find out about it.
And absolutely, and once again, to get River's Edge. Is a Christian school. It's not. It's a religious affiliated school. It's not all private schools are, and private school tuition, can run, into the $20,000 and $30,000 range. It's not, which the vouchers would only cover a portion of that. That's one of the reasons that the financial analysis predicts that 2/3 of the students will already be 2/3 of the recipients of these scholarships will already be in private schools. That will just help their families pay for what they're already getting. It gets a discount on their tuition. So
and to be fair, there's capacity issues at schools too. Just because I could theoretically make it. It could be a financial possibility for me to put my kid into school. That doesn't mean that school has room for my kid and many other kids trying to apply for it in the upcoming years,
or that they would accept you.
Right.
I mean, one of the arguments that the Democrats kept trying to make during the week was that yes, it's school choice, but the choice lies with the schools, the private schools, because the private schools can choose, which students they will accept, and that is, a feature of private schools is that they're the one they accept the students they want to accept, whereas public schools accept the students who live within the school zone, the zone that's and others, because Knox County, the school zones for each school are kind of
fluid. I think it'd be a good word.
Malleable.
There you go.
So.
Right, and the one thing that combines two of the issues in session is that Knox County Schools, by mandate, I believe, is obliged to take any kid that lives in the district, regardless of immigration status. And so we have kids in Knox County Schools who are technically undocumented, and that adds into that now they're allowed to go into schools to get stuff, where a private school could refuse that student for multiple reasons, and not giving that access to a quote-unquote undocumented citizen that we have in locally.
Yeah. Tennessee schools are required to educate everyone who lives in Tennessee. Every student who lives in Tennessee.
Right. Status is irrelevant.
There's not that's not one of those restrictions there. I don't know, it will be interesting to see as the immigration enforcement goes forward if they will indeed do things like try to do enforcement at school. Mostly if they just try to do enforcement at school, it would be, I would think, at the beginning or the end of the school day, if parents go to pick up their kids.
Yeah, good point.
Because a lot of the youngsters who are going to school were born, have been born in the United States and are United States citizens.
Right.
So going to round up a United States citizen is not kosher. So that goes to your birthright citizenship thing that pesky U.S. Constitution requires. So, but their parents, of course, if they are here without documentation, would be the more likely targets. And if they go to a school to do that, it would be out when parents would be there, which would be the beginning and the end of the school day. And a lot of, a lot of parents don't pick up their kids, and when you one of the things about that, one of the reasons that so many people come to the United States and are willing to risk being here without documentation is so they can work, and so they are, their parents are probably working. In fact, I live in North Knoxville, in an area of North Knoxville where there's a very large Hispanic population, and I live near Northwest Middle School. When Northwest Middle School lets out, students walk home. They're not, they're not getting picked up by their parents, and there are a lot of Hispanic children who go to school there. They walk home. Now, I suppose I could follow them home, but I should already know where they live, or if they're that far along in the process. But
that's the other thing too. When they opened up with this ruling that they opened up access to go into schools and churches, at least the school side, you would think that they could get some sort of information from the schools instead of having to go physically into the schools.
Yes, it's
more an information-seeking venture than it is necessarily going into the schools to get somebody. It's going into the schools to get information on where a student lives so that they can go after their parents.
Yeah, and the other on the church side, it would require cooperation with the church. If the church even asks immigration status, there are something like 17 Spanish-speaking congregations in Knoxville. A lot of them may or may not. A lot of them may not even ask, because a lot of religious organizations, a lot of churches, that is something that doesn't matter to them. That what matters to them is tending to the spiritual needs of whoever comes in the door.
Right.
And so they may not have that information. But they can, law enforcement can develop intelligence on people that they suspect are here illegally or without proper documentation. They have other means of gathering that information. If they, social media, all kinds of ways to do that. So, but the school systems are going to have to be dealing with that, and possibly losing some students to the voucher thing. It's not. The numbers of vouchers that are going to be going to kids that are public school students would not. You wouldn't empty the hallways of any school. 6,000 vouchers is basically the size of three large high schools in Tennessee. Right. So there are many school systems that are larger than 6,000. So.
Right, like just for to me, like I always try to put it as like, if somehow magically all 20, like it's a third, if all 20,000 came out of Knox County schools, but we got to go over every county in the state, and Knox County's the fourth largest district. So you got to think that it's going to be like percentage wise, the largest district's going to lose the most students.
If they all came out of Knox County schools would lose about a third of their students.
Right, which would be detrimental to Knox County schools, but Nashville and Davidson County schools will take a huge chunk. Probably mathematically, the larger districts will take larger percentages of that 20,000, and so
maybe, yeah.
I would think that my guess would be, we would take the third largest amount of kids coming out of that 6,000 left over from the 1/3 that isn't already in private school. So maybe 100 kids, 200 kids next year would be my ballpark.
Your guess is as good as mine on that. I'm not going to get too far in the hypothetical math, but yeah, I mean, it's not going to empty out, a particular school. And the state, the Lee administration, of course, has, these are two different pots of money. They are going to quote unquote hold harmless school systems that so that if they do lose students, it won't cost them money. I'm not sure how that's exactly going to work, but because that is, enrollment is the basis for the formula. It's not the only factor. God knows the formula for funding education is very, very complicated, but the Lee administration claims that they will that school systems will be held harmless, and so it won't matter to them, or shouldn't matter to them. So anyway, we are entering a brave new world of school vouchers, and the schools and parents will be adapting to that. We'll be following that, of course. Want to go back to some of the other things that happened during the week, a little bit closer to home. One is the city council 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. We talked about this. There was the executive director of Turn Up Knox, Denzel Grant, went to council and to speak, and started speaking on one particular issue, and then pivoted to Turn Up Knox and their work, and complained that the city had not paid them for their violence interruption work under a contract that had been approved in October. So that's been several months that they had not been received any of the funding they were supposed to receive. He was ruled out. The Mayor Kincannon ruled him out of order, eventually turning off his microphone, which is a pretty unusual step. But it did kind of bring to the surface that there has been tension between the city and a really high. I mean, the violence prevention effort in the city has been one of the things that the administration's really touted, because they say that they need help from the community. They're not just law enforcement to address violent crime. Turn Up Knox was formed essentially with city seed money 2 years ago. They get $450,000 a year from city government. One of their kind of hallmark or calling card is that the staff are people who are from the community, who are street smart. Some of them have been in trouble with the law themselves in the past. They live in high crime areas, grew up in high crime areas in many instances, and they have that street credibility, and then they also undergo extensive training on de-escalation techniques and things like that. So it's it's one of the few, if not only, group in the city that has that type of that combination of training and street smarts to do that. And they have been credited, even the city, LaKenya Middlebrook, who runs the Office of Community Stability or Safety, Office of Community Safety, has praised them for their help in reducing crime, and murders are down slightly. Non-fatal shootings are way down, 45% last year, and murders in the East KPD's East District, which is basically East Knoxville. It's a little bit larger than just East Knoxville, but it's essentially East Knoxville, where there have always been or at least in recent years has always been a place where there have been a lot of homicides, a lot of shootings. In 2 years, the number dropped from 24 in 2020, 24 murders in East Knoxville in 2022. There were 8 last year. That's a 67% drop. So and Turn Up Knox's efforts were highlighted as being instrumental in, not the sole reason, but instrumental in helping those numbers, helping the city reach those numbers. But like I said, in October, City Council approved the contract they're working under now. As I said, $450,000 a year, and for some reason, and the city hadn't paid them. And one of the things when this came up a couple of weeks ago, the city basically said that there were issues with Turn Up Knox's documentation of their activities, the things that they do, and things like that. And Turn Up Knox just recently became a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So there's a lot more reporting required in that instance. So, apparently a lot of these things were, the city was wanting, records of activities and wanted more detail than Turn Up Knox had been providing. One of the examples might have been, if I can recall correctly, was they said they had a training session for staff. They said how many staff went to the, and they reported that. The city rejected that, saying we need to know how many staff went, that sort of thing, that kind of level of reporting, and the city withheld the money. They withheld funding until they could get that documentation in place, and which had clearly frustrated Grant, who made his case in city council kind of out of order in the agenda. And then it turns out that last week, at the beginning of the week, Middlebrook, who's like I said, the head of the Office of Community Safety, and Kincannon's chief of staff, David Brace, met with the Turn Up Knox board of directors and essentially said, you need to get rid of your leadership, you need to get rid of Grant and one other person on their staff, so we can or you're going to lose your funding. We're going to terminate the contract. And they gave the board until Wednesday to respond. The board responded Wednesday and said, we're not doing that. We're not getting rid of Grant. And it was kind of one of those things. I got a hold of the response that the Turn Up Knox board sent. It was one of those things that they said that their the leadership of Grant, and Lydia Brown was the other person. She does a lot of the compliance work for the organization, and said that they were integral to the success, and that the relationships that they established in the community were key to how Turn Up Knox operates, and that it would severely restrict their ability to do the job the city was contracting them to do.
It also seems like a weird threat to, we're not going to give you the money we haven't given you yet.
Well, they were going to.
We'll start giving you the money we promised.
If they terminate the contract, though, there's no promise of any money. So, but one of the things that the board did say that they wanted to work with the city. The board said that Grant would apologize. Grant told me that he would apologize to city council for coming in, essentially disrupting their meeting by speaking out of order, and he expressed to me that it was, he didn't want it to be a big public thing. It's not about not about the city, not about him. It's about the work, and the city did, and actually, they began processing their first payment for the month of November, the day that Grant spoke to council. So they did get paid for the month of November. They're processing the month of December pay now. So the paperwork issue appears to have been resolved. So but this whole dispute over leadership and the relations with between Turn Up Knox and the city administration, it's one of those things that you wonder how badly those relationships have been affected, and have they been, is there a way for them to reconcile and move forward? I know for sure that Grant and the board at Turn Up Knoxville seem to think that they can move forward and put this behind them. Don't know about the city has basically just said, we're reviewing the contract. I talked to them. As I said, they'd given them, I called the city officials after they had received the notification from the board. Said, okay, you said you're gonna terminate the contract, and they said no. They said no. Are you going to terminate the contract? They said, well, no, we're going to be reviewing the contract. So that the Kincannon administration is apparently reviewing the contract and trying to figure out what they're going to do. One of the in some ways, Turn Up Knox has an advantage in that they are, to my knowledge, the only organization in the city that offers what they offer, and that is local neighborhood and community credibility, as well as the training that they have received as through the funding from the city. So the idea though that they can't be replaced is, I think most people who've been around and worked long enough know that nobody, just about anybody can be replaced, but it's hard to see that there would be an exact replacement organization for Turn Up Knox. The city could do the same thing they did for Turn Up Knox and help an organization form and move forward, but that would set this back another 2 years. So I don't know where they're going to go with that. Right now, the ball is in the city's court as far as the future of that contract, and my guess is they will try to keep me from finding out everything about it I can, but we'll see. It's very rare that disputes like this get played out in public like this, but it's also good to know that to find out how business operates with when you're dealing with the government, the good and the bad. So we will be following that, of course, in the coming weeks. Another organization that was in the news last week it wasn't over a contract dispute, but it was over funding that is ending naturally. The Legal Aid of East Tennessee has been running an eviction prevention program, and they've been really, really busy. hundreds and hundreds of tenants over the past couple of years who have been gotten behind in their rent, getting sideways with their landlord. The landlord tries to evict them, initiates court proceedings, And Legal Aid of East Tennessee has this program for people who are low income. They have to make below 80% of the average median income to qualify. They step in and negotiate with landlords, and the goal is not necessarily to make sure that these people, stay in that particular unit, in that particular development. Although that can be the result of these negotiations, but the goal is to prevent there from being an official court judgment against the tenant, because that can follow you. First of all, you're going to lose your home. Second of all, you won't be able to get public housing if you qualify for that, and you would, pretty much the people that they represent could qualify for public housing, and so there's a this program, and then you put in the factor that we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Rents have gone up tremendously. And wages have stayed stagnant, and so now this has led to, between 2023 and 2024 eviction proceedings in Sessions Court jumped more than 50%. So it's a real issue, and this program that Legal Aid has been running has been funded for the last 18 months through American Rescue Plan Act money from the COVID years, and that money's running out in May. So you've got a program here that is really vital to keeping people in housing or qualified for housing, and it is in danger of losing all of their funding, and that's so obviously they it's $600,000 a year, so that's it's a pretty penny for them. They went to county commission last week to make a presentation on their situation, obviously hoping that as the county develops its budget for the next fiscal year, that they would include something for the organization. One of the things that they pointed out very strongly was that for every dollar that they spend or that goes to the program, $6.14 in savings are realized, and so that's that was one of their major selling points, and that's in all kinds of social services and law enforcement and those kinds of things. The executive director, Deborah House, and the managing attorney for the program is Michael Davis. Both kind of gave impassioned, justification for the program, and I think that in many ways it was well received. They had lots of good questions from county commissioners, but then you get Larson J., the commissioner who's running for county mayor in 2 years, kind of cut to it. It's like, okay, the county doesn't have a whole lot of money. We're in a budget crisis ourselves, budget crisis and a debt crisis. And this would be an added $600,000 to the county budget. And he said, well, what are you going to do? Moving forward, if we don't fund you. Yeah. And House was, said that, they're working with others. They're talking to the city about see if they can get funding through the city. And they're talking to, the United Way. They're talking to other possible funding sources, for this. And, we've got, more than, and again, they point out, more than half of the renters in Knox County are cost burdened, which means they're paying at least 30% of their income on housing, which is puts them in, and many are extremely cost burdened, which is 50% of their income or more. That puts people more risk of falling into homelessness, and that sort of thing. And so they are really making a big push to continue their work, and it's not insignificant. They handled between November of 2023 and December of 2024, they handled 486 eviction cases, and that's that's a large number. 91% of the time they prevented judgments against the tenants. But you're talking about almost 500 cases a year where people would not have representation in Sessions Court during these proceedings, because these are civil proceedings. There's no right to an attorney in a civil proceeding. So, and these are low-income residents who probably would not be able to afford, or who would not be able to afford an attorney. So, that's one of the issues that Knox County is going to be facing, and really the city of Knox will be facing it too, because there are a lot of programs that are funded through American Rescue Plan Act funds, and other COVID relief efforts, and that money is going away. And there are programs that have received funding from that source that will need to find new sources of revenue if they are to continue their work. And I spoke briefly with Chris Caldwell, who is the chief financial officer for the county, and he said that yes, he expects a lot of organizations that have received ARPA funding to be coming forward to see if the county can do anything to replace the federal money that is going away anytime soon. Plus, and there probably won't be. This is federal money from one pot that's going away, and in the current administration, probably will not be coming up with any new programs to do such things. So that will be something to keep an eye on during the local budget season, which is just about upon us now. To see how Legal Aid of East Tennessee and other organizations are able to sustain some of these programs that have been funded that way. The one other story we did this week, which is not quite as dire, although a lot of people in the local music scene are probably concerned. The Pilot Light, which is a tiny venue with an outsized impact on the local music scene, located in the Old City. Has been open since 2000. It's its 25th year, and its founder and the person who is most synonymous with the Pilot Light, Jason Boardman, has decided to step away at the end of the year and let someone else handle the day-to-day operations. It's a nonprofit organization that runs the Pilot Light, which is kind of unusual for a music venue, but they have nurtured local bands for years and years and years. They have really been the place where if you are a local band, you've got almost have to play there to really put yourself on the map locally, and you can even move forward to greater things. Royal Bangs was a local band that a few years ago rose to kind of national prominence, and they were mainstays at the Pilot Light. And in fact, one of the members actually works at the Pilot Light now. But one of the former members, I should say. But anyway, Boardman is going to step back. The board is looking for somebody to replace him, during the year. In the meantime, they're going to be celebrating. And we had our correspondent Matthew Everett wrote the story about that, and Matthew's been a good addition to us, and he has a lot of insight into the local music scene, and was really perfect for doing this story. And we wish Jason Wells, as he moves forward, but of course he's still going to be there for a bit, so don't he's got a whole year to celebrate 25 years of running the Pilot Light. So we had some as we mentioned earlier, we are a website and newsletter. Those stories were primarily website stories, which are generally longer, although our coverage of the special session was almost entirely in our newsletter. Our newsletter goes out every morning on weekdays. Shows up in your inbox at 6:00. You get that as part of your subscription, which you can get at CompassKnox.com. But the newsletter is more than just kind of linked to whatever's to other stories. It's a source of information itself. We had several bits in there that you wouldn't have read about elsewhere, or you may have, but most of the stuff is information that we pick up on, so you can so that when you can read your email every morning and know pretty much what's going on in the area. One of the things we talked about is the Knoxville Police Department will be getting some financial help from an organization that's formed. The announcement was made this week, the Knoxville Police Foundation, and they're going to be raising money and providing things like funding for training and that sort of thing for the police department to kind of supplement what the city provides in funding, and what maybe in some cases what KPD can't get through grant funding, that sort of thing. So the foundation has just started. They are in the midst of raising money for that effort now. And then another thing that we've covered this before, we've talked about it before, is this in the county, this residential infrastructure development district. They have the county commission last week approved a policy for that moving forward. That's basically developers ask the county to create a district in the subdivision they're developing, and covering that subdivision, and the residents in that subdivision will be assessed, maybe a special assessment above what they pay in property taxes, and with the money to go toward infrastructure improvements adjacent to the development, and these are near the development. These are road improvements, sewer and water improvements, those kinds of things that that would not have been done had it not been for these developments going in. So as developers can, instead of the developers baking that money into the cost of their houses, they can use this assessment to pay for the infrastructure improvements. As with anything else, the end user, who is the homeowner, is going to pay one way or the other.
Right. So it's going to be like, last year they would have listed the house for $315,000. After this goes through, they'll list it for $310,000. But when you get through all your paperwork and stuff like that, you're going to pay that extra $5,000.
Yeah. That's essentially.
I don't know the numbers, but yeah.
That for an example, that would work fine. Of course, that kind of is utterly dependent on the.
Right, or they just keep the house at $315,000.
They could keep the house at $315,000,
and then you pay an extra $5,000 at the end too.
But that would be a selling point for them to say, because if you got one subdivision that is got this district, and you got down the road, you've got another subdivision that doesn't, and the one down the road that doesn't, their list prices are $315,000, and the one that does have one of these districts, it's $310,000. Like you said, $5,000 off. Probably more than that, but it all depends on the number of lots and everything else. And these developments have to be larger than 10 acres, by the way. So it's pretty large, pretty good sized subdivisions. So in theory, if they lower the price, people could pay a lower down payment to get that property. And the other thing that quote unquote could be a benefit is, of course, your property assessment for your taxes is based on the sale price of your home at first, but the one thing is the assessments, and the assessments are capped at $1,000 a year. At these, but those are assessments. Those are made to pay off a bond issue that the Industrial Development Board issues to actually pay the cash for the improvements, and that is money borrowed at a lower rate than a mortgage.
Right.
So there's some, it gets complicated, but the bottom line is, if you buy in one of those subdivisions, you're going to pay a little bit more money probably. And, they would come with things like extra turn lanes in the first one that's been approved, a roundabout nearby that's going to benefit, if you think roundabouts are a benefit,
you stepped into a big controversial issue there, Scott.
I love roundabouts. I think they're great, but I don't have one right down the road from my house. So, but I use them on a frequent basis, and I really like them. There's a roundabout near the first one of these districts they're creating, and anybody can use it. It's not just the exclusive use of these residents. They're paying for it, but anybody can use it. And that's a road improvement that was not on any list of road improvements that the county was going to make in the future. And as anybody knows who's been paying attention to development issues in Knox County in the past few years, invariably controversy arises over roads that are too narrow, too windy, intersections that are dangerous, those kinds of things. So this is kind of a way for the county to raise the funds to make those improvements without raising property taxes, which is what is almost the third rail of county politics anymore. So anyway, that we talked about that, and it did pass. So those look for future developments to include those types of infrastructure development districts. Then we had another piece on an interesting development, the River and Rail Theater, which puts on shows at the currently in the Old City Performing Arts Center, is going to be moving. They bought the Sturkey Auditor House, which sorry, I got stuck on the name. It's a weird name. Anyway, the Sturkey House is on the corner of Magnolia and Cherry Street. It was the focus of lots of attention a couple of years ago when the state Department of Correction had proposed building a parole office there, and that drew all kinds of controversy. Historic preservationists. The house is 99 years old now, I think. So it's almost 100. It's a 100-year-old house. Historic preservationists were against it. A lot of people, including State Representative Sam McKenzie, were against it because East Knoxville has struggled to overcome the perception that it is a dangerous area, and putting a parole officer on one of the most parole office on one of the most prominent intersections of East Knoxville was what they said would be a bad look and not conducive to any kind of revitalization of the community. So the state did nix those plans, of course, and then the Cortland Group, which has been involved in a lot of historic preservation efforts around the Old City, especially, bought the property. They didn't have any plans for it at the time, but they bought it basically to keep it from getting torn down. And then now, River and Rail Theater is going to. They bought the property already for was $1.65 million. They are going to do renovations to it and move out there, and eventually, they don't have a date yet, but they're going to move out there and make that their new home. The theater space will be larger. They have a larger stage, more seating, convenient parking. It's going to be a big change for River and Rail Theater, but they will be moving out there at some point. We don't know exactly when, but it will be their new home, and people can go out there and see a show, and that's one of the things that Magnolia Avenue is getting, that people have been pointing to the need to redevelop Magnolia Avenue for a long time, and this is what I would consider a significant investment in that part of town. So those are kind of the things that we went over last week, that we reported on. Now, of course, this week, first week of February, we've got plenty of stuff to work on. The school board meets Monday in a work session and Thursday in a voting session, their monthly voting session, at the Summer Place Boardroom in downtown Knoxville. The big thing on the agenda is going to be a new K through grade 8 school for the area just northwest of downtown Knoxville. The school system had been looking for ways to serve the students who currently go to elementary schools in Mechanicsville, Westview, Lonsdale, and Beaumont, those neighborhoods. There is no middle school in those neighborhoods. They're all they feed 4 different middle schools, and but in the school system, some of those schools are older. They're not in the best shape. Maynard Elementary School is one of the oldest schools in the county, and it's in Mechanicsville. A big change that's coming up is the Transforming Western project, which is, as the name suggests, a transformational overhaul of the Western Heights housing community, public housing community, which is in the Beaumont community, right behind Beaumont Elementary School. And it's going to bring in an additional 400 students to the area, which is going to so that additional capacity is something that the school system wanted to address. What they have decided to do is do a land swap with Knox County, and the site of the former rural high school, which was a city school, was closed after the consolidation back in the last century. But the rural high school location at the top of the ridge behind Western Heights is available. That's where they're going to put this K-8 school. The school will serve about 1,600 students. In order to do that, the school system's would have to close Beaumont Magnet Academy and Maynard Elementary School. They would turn Westview into a pre-K only facility, and all those students would go to the new school up at the rural property. There's going to be a big presentation about that at the work session on Monday. School system has about $66 million set aside for this project. They'll vote on it on Thursday. One other thing that kind of takes the attention away from something else they're going to be voting on, which is John Roswick, the superintendent's new contract. His base pay of $266,000. That is also on the agenda. On Tuesday, City Council's meeting in the small assembly room of the City County building. They'll be talking about a $1.75 million grant from the Opioid Abatement Council, which is basically distributing money from the opioid lawsuit settlements that have been going through. We talked about this a little last time, because this would, if they get it, would help fund the KPD co-response program for 3 years. And so council was going to consider this 2 weeks ago. They complained that there wasn't enough documentation to go with the item on their agenda. They didn't know the money was going to be going toward. There was nothing really set out in there. When the agenda came out on Thursday, I gave it a quick look, because it came out, this is Friday. This was last night it came out. Took a quick look. There's lots of documentation in there now. There's probably more documentation than anybody has a right to read through, but they've got plenty of documentation now, and they'll see about getting that grant. The University of Tennessee Knoxville Campus Advisory Board is meeting at the end of the week, Friday at the Haslam College of Business. They don't have an agenda up yet, but typically the way these go, Chancellor Dante Plowman gives the board, kind of an update of how things are going on campus, and talk about academically, with student life, those kinds of things. And they'll also probably talk about they're also planning to talk about the Haslam College of Business itself. There's a new building going up on campus to expand the college, which is one that gets lots of attention from the UT staff, or UT administration. So those are things that are going to be on tap this week. We know we'll be covering those. There will be other things that we'll be covering too. The news business, things pop up and you cover them. And so we will be doing that. And you can read about that, like we said, at CompassKnox.com. That's about it for this week's episode of Compass Points. Lots of thanks to Lord Seth Barber for producing us and trying to compensate for my inadequacies.
That's not fair. I'm just trying to add stuff on.
Oh well,
I am the listener in person. I'm the one that says I have a question about that because I don't know as much as you do, Scott. So please help me understand a little further.
Oh well, you're too kind. Anyway, many thanks to you, Seth, for doing what you do, and also thanks to Will Wright for our music, and thank you for listening. And we'll be back next week for another installment of Compass Points.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.